Welcome to Tortall Recall, the podcast where we reread the Tamora Pierce books and talk about them, and especially today, yell about them. This is our final Dane episode. We're doing the last book in the Immortals Quartet, The Realm of the Gods, and this is our second episode about it. And this is our featured Dane and Numair Screaming Time episode. So let's do some quick introductions. I'm Kelly. I'm hosting again today. My pronouns are she, her. And our extra special treat today is, if we were a Darking, what would our super fun characteristic be? I want mine to be that, I only bounce. I don't move normally. I just hit the ground and just bounce.
Oh, cute.
That's very cute.
I guess I'd be, bouncy instead of jelly or something.
Oh, a bouncy lass. Oh. Hello, I'm Amy. My pronouns are she, her. And if I were a Darking, I would have sort of like a human face. There'd be 3 holes on me, but the mouth hole would always be kind of gaping open, it looks a little bit like I'm screaming.
Oh no.
Why? But it in a cute way.
Okay.
So are you going for a forest spirit, from Princess Mononoke? Not forest spirit, but the little
yeah,
Kodama from
yeah,
Princess Mononoke
a little
look?
bit like that, and a little bit like the proposed evolution of Ditto.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm Grace. My pronouns are she, her, and I would have flowers. Lots of flowers, really tacky resin jewelry from the 60s that has pressed flowers in it, that. That's the aesthetic that I'm going for. Yeah, I was almost I would have gross. It's almost I would get human hair and be mourning jewelry.
I love it.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like it. Oh, no.
I love that. Do that.
I don't like it.
Knit yourself a sweater out of human hair to wear.
Gross.
Hi, I'm Gus. My pronouns are they, them. Okay, so the first time Kelly mentioned this prompt, I think she phrased it as if you were a Darking, what would your accessory be or something? And I misinterpreted that as would you be Dane's bracelet? So I would want to hook around an ear, around the back of an ear, so you can tell things to the person.
Ooh.
So
I
that's
like that.
It's diverging from the prompt a bit, but
I like it.
No, it's good.
It's also good.
And it's also an identifying characteristic.
So your name could be Ear Friend.
your friend. Yes,
Yeah,
good one.
name.
Earbud!
Oh my god.
That is good.
We did it.
Yes.
Okay, so as promised on the last episode, a bulk of this episode is going to be devoted to us talking about Dane and Numair's relationship in this book. So we're about to head into that now. It's sort of Social Justice Corner extended, but just for Dane and Numair.
We're also going to have music bookends on this section, I think. We'll have a 15-second little musical thing, and there'll be another one of those at the end. You can find the timestamps for those in the episode description if you'd like to skip more effectively.
Maybe if this is going to be a hard topic for you, just skip this episode. Or we promise to talk about some nice things at the very end, and we will mark that time for you.
Just skip to their friendship and ratings and fun stuff. Amy, are you comfortable doing this disclaimer?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about relationships with large age gaps. We are not criticizing real-life age gap relationships or all age gap relationships, but we do feel the need to discuss this age gap relationship in a larger context of literature that is aimed towards young women especially, and especially sort of medieval fantasy-esque literature. Because this exists in a larger context, it is fiction, and it was specifically written, and its portrayal is something that we need to analyze.
With that, I have a little song to bring us into this section, which is Tamora Pierce, why? That's the song.
Oh, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, good song, Kelly.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything that they just like want to get off their chest? Just a little bit of screaming.
Yeah, I hate this. I mean, like, it's obviously all tainted by the way that I feel about the relationship as a whole, but I did not like the way this relationship was written, like, even outside of any other aspect. So, like, when I'm being critical, that's not coming solely from some, like, hot button, oh, there's X amount of years in between them, so it's automatically wrong. Like, I also don't like the way that they treat each other, I guess, or the way that it is written. Or the way Numair treats Dane, I guess. I don't really have a problem the other way.
Gus, do you have any screams that you want to get out at the very beginning?
I think the issue that we haven't touched on yet, although obviously there's a lot, but I feel like we should just bring this up early, is that it's not just an age differential, it's a power differential. Mm-hmm. Not in terms of like magical power, because you could make the argument that Dane is extremely magically powerful. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the fact that Numair is Dane's teacher, yes, and also that they are traveling alone together and that they are each other's only companions on this like trip where they're very isolated, severely makes me unhappy.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because Dane has been really traumatized. Like, she lost her family, she like was driven away from the only place she could call home, she has had to go through so much in like a lot of really difficult circumstances in a really short amount of time. She only has one person that's been a real constant for her, and several animals, but one person, and he is like her only guardian, and proceeds to take advantage of that situation, which is, and you can't really look at it as anything except taking advantage when there's that much of a difference in people's positioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you brought up, and like Gus, you also brought up, like even in all these books, even though she has very close animal friends, there's no animal friend that's been constant throughout the book. So really the only constant presence in every single book and in most of the places that she's been, arguably she's been like isolated from him for short periods of time, is Numair. So. Mm-hmm.
And there's also something that Numair says that's sort of similar to what George says, that's sort of like in Alana, where he is positioning himself as like, it is very difficult for me not to be like, not to take advantage of you in this situation, and I'm trying really hard.
Not that hard.
Yeah, like clearly not that hard. And that's like, I know that we've already talked about that and talked about how a lot of people find that attitude in men to be like actually really great, because there are a lot of men who like do take advantage of people in that situation and who don't really care whether or not they're doing it. But in this context, I find it so unsettling, because it is again sort of putting responsibility on Dane to say yes or no, not even that, to like try to deny it, and to like either way Numair comes out looking like a good person.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's, related to that, there's a lot of focus on both Numair being like, this is a really like I could take, like, this is a situation where I don't want to take advantage of you and that could happen, and then doing it anyways. Mm-hmm. And then also there's a lot of focus on Dane like being like, no, I know I want this, and in that sense I think we're supposed to see it as her like exercising like her power to like choose things, which is, we want people to be able to make their own choices and everything, and so that comes across as something that's like maybe, quote unquote, like a good thing, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's on Numair to really like refuse that, and that he like really like, it's on him to make better choices than he made in this book.
Definitely. And not to rob Dane of her agency, because she does have ability to choose, but when we talk about people who are young, we're talking about people who have like really limited experience of the world, and you know, a lack of, like, situational lack of awareness of the choices that are available to them. And we're seeing Dane as someone with, like, a really limited and then really skewed experience that's, like, so focused on Numair as the person that she can rely on and care about. And I think that that's a situation that makes it really difficult to make choices, you know, and especially if Numair is saying, I want this from you, but I'm not going to take it because I'm a good guy. You know, it kind of forces her into this position to a certain extent where she can say, well, I care about you, so I'm going to give it to you because you want it from me and I can make you happy. And that's something that is just, like, not really a situation where you can make any choice that you want, you know?
I also, one thing, I guess, Grace, one thing you talked about was that you didn't, like, just even outside of the other things that all of us don't appreciate about this relationship, you didn't like the way that it was written. And I guess I'm wondering exactly what you meant, and I guess one thing that I didn't like about the way that it was written was sort of like the immediate turn their relationship took, where, I mean, suddenly in this book, and arguably, like, time passes between the books, like, they were already acting a lot more intimate with each other, sort of physically, but then, like, as soon as, like, Numair said that he was interested in her, like, they were, like, very physically intimate a lot of the time.
Right.
And not even, like, more emotionally intimate necessarily. I just, like, didn't understand how, like, that corner, like, turned so quickly. It wasn't, like, super, I don't know.
Right. I think that is part of what made me uncomfortable. Like, it wasn't really written as a progression that was really natural in their relationship. And part of that is part of why, you know, it's something uncomfortable to read, because it would have been completely inappropriate for that to be any aspect of their relationship when Dane was 14. So why is it any more appropriate now in this next book? It's not. And that's why we had, I think, to take this sharp left turn into now suddenly Numair is noticing her body and she keeps ending up in these situations where she's naked in front of him. And that's how we're going to build the relationship. Like, I think I would be fairly uncomfortable reading a book where those were the defining romantic elements, even if I was reading a book in which the protagonists were complete peers to each other.
And Kelly, we were talking earlier, and Kelly did bring up that a lot of people started sexualizing Dane specifically in this book when this relationship was going to happen, and that didn't feel great.
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit in the last episode, although I can't remember, and I sort of read that as, like, Tamora Pierce, like, the same thing, like, trying to prime us, like, Dane is not a child anymore, now she is, like, a person who is capable of having, like, a sexual relationship, and she's, like, preparing us for this, but...
And the way we know that is through other people.
Through other people's eyes.
Her.
Yeah. Through her being objectified and sexualized by other people.
Right.
Yes.
Even though it is mentioned, as we brought up, that she's had, she's had suitors, and she's, like, she's kissed people and stuff, that that doesn't come up. Like, she doesn't think about that before. Like, we don't see any of her, like, considering that or thinking about that until, like, she's in the middle of things with Numair.
Right. And I would also say that, like, something that also troubles me related to that is that Numair is talking about, like, we've been aware of Numair as kind of like a Don Juan, I guess, in the past. Like, he has, that just came to mind, I don't know, like, he has, like, conquests at the court, and we know about his exes, and we've seen Dane be kind of jealous, or whatever, and maybe that was what we were supposed to be reading as the past. But then he references, like, oh, people will think I'm doing this, or, like, will suspect badly of me or see me as this bad guy because they know I've had these, like, all these trysts in the past, and now I'm getting to you, or whatever. And, like, it doesn't seem like his moralizing of it is internal, where he can see how he's taking advantage of the relationship. It's very much like, I don't want people to think I'm a bad guy. They already see me as a bit of a womanizer, you know? Like, it's not very critical.
He does have one line where he says it's very easy for, like, an older man, especially somebody who has a lot of experience in romance, to, like, convince somebody younger who has less experience that they're interested in you. So I feel like that's the one time where he really acknowledges, like, I have this wealth of life experience that you don't, and that could make it easy for me to make you believe, or to make, I'm having trouble phrasing it, but like to make you get in a relationship with me. And I thought that was like the truest, or the closest this book came to acknowledging potential flaws in this relationship.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because Dane's into him, so it's fine, right? It's not.
Right.
Yeah, can I say something as someone who hadn't read this book before and like knew that this relationship was going to go this way because I've seen people talking about it but didn't like know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
go for it.
So I really liked the mentor-student relationship for like the first 3 books. Like I really liked it, and
it's solid.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then this happened, and now I just feel like all of it is really, like, I don't think that I can like it anymore because I don't know at what point it becomes a difficult, like, sort of like a sexualizing a teen relationship rather than a I want to teach this person what I know and I like and respect them thing.
Yeah, it makes me so sad because, like, I really, like, they were, like, a great pair of, like, friends and, like, mentor-mentee, and they were really close to each other, and he was kind of, like, her found family, like, I mean, arguably through this book, although things changed, but, like, it made me really sad to, like, see that turn this sharp corner here.
Yeah.
And I think that I was, like, again, I knew this was going to happen, but it was a lot worse than I thought it would be, because I think there are ways that this could have, like, there are ways where I could have been comfortable with this relationship. Like, if it happened when Dane was older, or after Dane was, like, after Dane and Numair were off on wilderness adventures alone, you know?
Right. Because I would say about that, I've seen people say, or I've talked to people who say, like, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I mean, a bit of a spoiler, but they do show back up in later books. I'm sure you're not surprised. But
oh, yeah, they were in Cal.
Yeah, so they show back up and people are saying, well, I'm not as uncomfortable with that. And it's like, well, yeah. Like, when you see them as adults who have had more of their life experiences, then it doesn't make me as uncomfortable. And there's no reason it needed to come into these books. Like, even if the author felt that they were totally destined for each other, just write that later. Like,
there's as far as it being later when they show up in the Kel books, Abby did the math, and apparently the first Kel book happens a year after this book. So
okay. Well, maybe I don't feel
I'm
that
sorry
strongly about that.
Yeah, no, we all thought that they happened that much, like, just like 5 years later or something.
I thought that they were like 10 years later. I thought they were so much later when I read them in the Cal books, and I was like, oh, my favorites, Dane and Numair again.
No, it's 10 years after Alana.
Like,
Yeah. And maybe we can deconstruct a little bit too. I know we talked about this with Alana and George as well, but like part of why this is really hard to go back and reread is that like you don't have as much of a sense of like the intricacies of life phases when you're a kid, because you're just like kid, non-kid. So even though you're like, wow, they're pretty different ages, and it's kind of weird that, or my experience was I was like, oh, it's kind of weird that he's her teacher. I was just like, well, they're both old, so it's fine, you know. And I didn't maybe precisely pay attention to like, oh, Dane's 16 and Numair's 30. I was just like, Dane's kind of young and Numair's kind of old, you know.
Yeah, I really want to talk about this because I read these for the first time when I was maybe like in like 4th grade, so I don't know how old that puts me, like somewhere between 8 and 10, I think. Yeah. And I thought this relationship was super romantic then, because like you said, they were both like indefinably older, and like teens had romances and stuff like that. Yeah. And even like up there when I was reading it in middle school, I thought it was really romantic. And I like read other books too with like this kind of age gap relationship, and like teenagers falling in love with men in like their 30s who are their teachers, and then having these relationships that were like portrayed as really beautiful. And like, so that really normalized like this sort of age gap and power gap relationship for me, like when I was a young teen. Like these were my favorite books, and now like looking back at it, like it scares me so much to think that, like, if I were 15, like, I wouldn't want, like, 15-year-old me getting into a relationship with a 30-year-old. Like, right, in middle school and the high school, sometimes I had crushes on my teachers, but it would have been horrible if, like, they had reciprocated, which is basically what Numair does here.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, and, one thing that we should probably, like, okay, we know that Numair is safe. Like, we know Numair is a good guy as a reader because the narrative tells us so. And, like, but that's not something that you can just emulate. And there is a real problem in the real world with men in positions of power taking advantage of often young women, not always, but people who are in their power and making themselves the same kind of figure as Numbert is. And we should, it just worries me that so much literature aimed at young women makes that easier.
Right. Right. Know? And yeah, not to get overly personal, because I don't think we do this a lot on the podcast, but it's bad because there's no conversations, there's no communication, except that one line that we did touch on where they say this is an aspect of our relationship, and my girlfriend is less than 2 years younger than me, and we've had very deliberate conversations about does this influence what you feel like you can tell me or communicate to me, how do we approach that? We both know this, let's be in the open about it. And that's what I feel could make a more healthy relationship, and it just never happens in this book. It's never acknowledged, even though we're seeing the formation of their relationship and their dynamic.
Mm-hmm. And I think this might be a good time to talk about, I don't remember who mentioned this earlier, but we talked about some people potentially making the argument that Dane and Numair are in more similar life phases to each other because this was fantasy medieval times. So let's discuss.
All right. So, who has some thoughts about what it means to be in fantasy medieval times and what those life stages look like in fantasy medieval times, a real time period?
Dragon time.
Dragons. Oh, how I miss you.
I should have been born in dragon times. That was my time period.
Yeah, throwback.
You could date anyone at any age and it was basically the same.
Well, I've seen people mention that Alana maybe says that if she was, or Cal, I'm not sure, if she was not training, then she would be getting married. And so there's sort of a reference to this, which, by the way, historically inaccurate, idea that women were married very young. But at the same time, this is not something, even if we only focus on Tamara Pierce's works, she's not being quote unquote historically accurate otherwise. Alana has access to birth control because Tamara Pierce clearly feels that birth control is something women need.
Well, actually, birth control is one of the first medications that you really find it historically, so it's not actually that far off that were this set in a real time period, Alana would have birth control. It's one of the first things that people find. We just don't talk about it. Also, I want to clarify the comment about how it wasn't even like that in the olden times. It was like that only if you were wealthy and you had status. Otherwise, people just kind of married people their age generally, and married when they were at least near adulthood. So what we consider adulthood now. I will say that category has changed over time, but not that much.
Right.
And also there's this thing called I forget what it's called. It's the Tiffany problem or the Tiffany something, which is just that if you talk about history in a way that goes beyond people's shallow interpretations of what actually happened, and you say true facts about Tiffany's throughout time. Oh my god, I need to leave. But if you say Tiffany was a name in 15th century Europe, but people conceive of it as a modern name. Victorian people apparently had nipple rings pretty commonly. Can I say that on the podcast? Also, I didn't fact check it, so it might be fake. Well, I don't know. I don't want the teens to get their nipples pierced without asking their parents because of me.
Okay. You did make it sound so cool when you briefly mentioned historical nipple rings.
I have to leave. Anyway, so there are a lot of things that are historically accurate that people don't think are historically accurate. There are a lot of things that aren't historically accurate that people do think are historically accurate. In general, arguing for historical accuracy in a book is used as a tactic to get people to stop critiquing something that happens in a book.
Well put.
And I also think that, as we mentioned earlier, regardless of whether something's historically accurate, when you're reading it as a child or a young adult, you might not understand that the sorts of things that might happen historically wouldn't just translate straight into your real life. So you might not think, like, it's okay for this person to be in a relationship while they're younger because that meant something different then.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Right. And, I mean, it's worth pointing out that since Dane, the main character of this book, is a teen girl, and these books are, you know, mostly geared at teen girls, Dane is both a relatable and aspirational figure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you're supposed to both relate to her and want to be like her, because she's so, you know, cool and rad.
Mm-hmm.
She's so rad.
So rad.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's a level of, like, identification that happens, that, you know, just makes it very easy to, I guess, like, feel like, you know, the things that she does are, you know, all, like, cool and good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Kelly, you were kind of talking about this earlier, but it just is so, like, sad to think about myself as a child reading this book, my friends as children reading these books. Like, it's really hard because, like, we've talked about so much, but this is, like, really where it comes to a head for me. Like, I loved these books. Like, they were, like, a real touchstone for me. Like, the Dane books, Tamora Pierce books in general, I loved them, and for them to be, like, so, at least for me, like, almost, like, beyond repair spoiled by this one choice of portrayal. Like, at least not spoiled, like, I wouldn't read them again, but, like, we've talked a lot about, like, would be fine if you discussed it enough. No matter what, I wouldn't read these to my daughter. Like, I wouldn't give them to her to read. I would maybe somehow cut some pages out or something, but, like, not
take a Sharpie.
Be like, yeah, it's weird, there's a lot of cliffhangers in the third book. Weird that there's not a fourth. Like,
so strange.
But I just, they really are, like, it's kind of, like, sad, and also, like, I don't know, I was talking to another friend who was saying too that these were, like, a favorite of hers, and she feels really sad looking back, and I think that, I don't know if that's, like, universally shared, but it is shared by a lot of people I know who, like, were really attached to these books as kids.
Yeah.
One thing that I've just been wondering is, like, if, and I still don't know if we should include this, if like, Tamora Pierce, this is authorial intent, I know we didn't want to say too much about, like, what Tamora Pierce intended here, but I wonder if she put this relationship in because she felt like every quartet, like, needs a romance, like, Dane needs her romance too, and like, Numera is, like, the main male character option, and also what that says about, like, giving, like, considering Dane's, like, all these characters are aspirational characters and, like, different models of womanhood for young girls, like, what options that gives people who aren't interested in romance, or, like, how it just lets you envision a future anywhere where maybe the romance isn't the main central part of your story.
Yeah, I like that. I think we should say that. Just, like, this would have been perfectly fine without a love story. It would have been a far better book.
Yeah, but Dane's story can't end until someone proposes marriage to her.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Oh my god, why were they even talking? You've been dating for, like, 6 minutes. Like,
they haven't been dating at all yet. He's like, maybe you'll marry me, and I was like, try dating first. I mean, don't, but, like, also, if you're gonna do that, then like, wait like, a hot second.
Yeah, like, cool your jets.
Cool your jets, for real.
By the way.
I have one thing left to say about Dane and Numera's relationship, which is there's one part of their romantic relationship in this book that I actually do like. It is a single line. It is at the end when Dane and Numera reunite, and he's like, hey, you should marry me, and she's like, nah, and then he says it a couple more times, and then finally he's like, I think I'll give up being a wizard and I'll take up juggling, and, you know, I could support us with juggling, with my juggling money.
Isolated from the rest of the text, it's so good.
Yeah. It's very cute.
Yeah, so that's the one bit that I still found a bit charming on this rereading. I was like, oh, you're juggling money, okay.
Yeah. And if they were just friends and he wanted to support them with juggling money, I would be into it.
I would also find that very charming.
Wait. 2 best friends juggling to live. Just a really good. I genuinely want that so much. Just like a weird family relationship, but it's just 2 people and one of them juggles to live and they both have very powerful magic.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's so many things. Like, I don't think Dane needs support. So I found it even more charming for that reason. Like, I think she's got it, bro.
Yeah.
But that was very thoughtful of you.
Yeah. I also wanted to briefly say, we've talked about this on our Mercedes Lackey episode, Valdemar Recall. But I think that a book that is an example of this situation done slightly more right is the second book in I think it's the Queen's Arrows trilogy by Mercedes Lackey, where there's a relationship between someone who's kind of a mentor and someone who's kind of a mentee, and they have a bit of an age difference and they're on a journey together, but they like talk so much about it and like who they are to each other as people, and like whether or not like Talia, the character there, has like a lot more agency, and it's better. So if you want to see this done better, I would recommend that book, and I would also like to hold it up as an example of like some ways that this can be improved. Agency, communication, conversations. I'm not going to call out the specific person who I was having this conversation with, and they're not on the podcast, and they don't listen to the podcast, but I did talk to somebody who was saying that she finds the choices around this not offensive because they're pulling from the romance genre. There's a reason that genre isn't for children, so this is a very specific call out for someone that will never reach them, but if you're also thinking that, you're wrong.
It's much more problematic when the audience for this is like young adults, young teenagers.
Right.
And they're not able to bring that sort of context that you need to think about how this might translate into the real world, well or not.
Right, because I think we've touched on this a little bit before too, but like young adults are kind of inherently an uncritical audience, which is really great in some ways because they can like learn new ideas and not be prejudiced in the same way that past generations have been and stuff like that. But it's really hard in other ways because books that you write for them are going into like an audience that doesn't have the life experience to perceive why it would be really difficult to like make balanced choices in this kind of relationship or something like that. I think we did a good job being calm.
Yes. Again, this is largely because we're all kind of tired, so shout out to 7 p.m. at night and the rain that's outside to keeping us just a little more chill than we could have been.
S.O. rain. I know, we promised a lot of shouting and we didn't really shout that much. But that's probably more sonically pleasing for our listeners.
Yes, I'm glad that we all used our NPR smooth radio announcer voices for this entire
this
segment.
is Kelly, bringing you Shouting Hour.
Hello, Kelly. I'm Amy, and I'll be here to shout.
Never fear, listeners. We do have rage in our hearts. The fire of rage in our hearts, it has not dimmed. But it has been filtered a bit by
Sleepiness.
wanting to sound reasonable and stuff.
Okay, well, let's move into Pierce the Veil, the section where we revive the dead author. We're going to talk about some Tamora Pierce authorial intent, although we're not going to delve too deeply into potentially her intent in writing this relationship.
Right.
Who would like to start?
Quick aside. Did any of us find anything?
I didn't, but I have some things to discuss about things that I think Tamora Pierce might have been doing.
Yeah.
So, and the first one is Bird King Still. There's so many birds, just so many birds in this book. Stormwing Bird Man. Dane is like a bird when she's chasing him. Tamora Pierce and birds. That's all I have to say. Oh man. The other one was, I found this book in particular, I talked to Amy a little bit about this when we were both reading it. I felt like I got a very distinct, like, sort of anti-war undertone in this book, which I hadn't been getting from the other Tamora Pierce books, which I mean, they all have a lot of war in them, and like being good at war and being tactical is important. But in this book in particular, like her descriptions of violence got very graphic. Like I think either Grace or Gus, one of you said there was like a whole bunch of body horror.
Yeah.
And I felt like that, along with like what she said about why Stormwings were created and how like all Dane's friends and the whole realm was suffering because of the war, sort of combined to give me a new, maybe Tamora Pierce was trying to say something anti-war in this book feeling.
Yeah, just as a reminder, Stormwings were created as a dream from from a survivor of war who saw all of the carnage and wanted something to make war less of a desirable thing. So Stormwings were created to desecrate bodies of victims of war, which sort of a roundabout way to do it.
Just a small critique.
Yeah, like there are probably better ways. Yeah, I'm actually interested in that reading because there's still very much sort of this concept of war is bad, so Tortall specifically has to stop it.
Yeah.
By doing fighting, perhaps with an army even, like a war.
Which will resemble war. Quite ideologically distinct, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. I think it's weird because Dane is, like, not a warrior in the way that protagonists are warriors in the Alana books, or the Kel books, or other books, but, you know, she's not a warrior, so she's not in a war, but she does deal with war a lot. But it's true that this book is has more of a negative tone towards war. And we'll have to maybe, like, keep watching for that in the Kel books and see if there's, like, a genuine, maybe, like, critique or pulling back after writing about Alana in such, like, a tactical way previously.
I have a completely unrelated and much less serious veil that I would like to pierce.
Yes.
So Kelly, early in the recording of this, you revealed some Tamora Pierce facts. One of which is that she's from your town in California, but all of her characters hate the cold, even when they're from cold areas. And I think that's because Tamora Pierce is unused to the cold. And because I feel like everyone I've talked to from the Midwest is always like, oh, this isn't cold at all. I've never felt cold in my life. I've been buried under 6 feet of snow since birth. Whereas everyone in these books is like, I'm so afraid of the cold and I hate it and I don't want to be around it, but it keeps being cold all the time. And I'm from the mountains. I don't want to be cold anymore. I was in the mountains.
California, California. Yes, Tamora Pierce, California pride. Hate the cold. Mild temperatures. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I mean, Gus and I are from Minnesota, and I, like, literally don't understand, like, why you would be that uncomfortable in the cold.
No.
Like, I can't. It's fine. You just go and you're fine.
I will contextualize Tamora Pierce for you because same town, right? Okay, so the coldest it gets in the winter is occasionally it freezes a little bit overnight. You might come out in the morning and like the puddles are a little frosty, but then that melts by the middle of the day. So like the coldest you're looking at is pretty much like maybe 45 during the winter, but mostly like 50 and 60.
Oh my god, how do you stand it?
Yeah, that sounds bad, frankly. And I'm not even from the Midwest. That sounds bad.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do the terrible thing where people are like, that's not cold. You've never seen cold, because that's the same point you're making. But, like, yeah, it gets much colder here, and you're still fine.
It's okay. I get to do that now because I moved to the East Coast, and I've experienced temperatures that are a bit colder. And I go back, and my younger brother is, like, it's 60 degrees out, and he's wearing his warmest jacket. I'm like, you don't understand. You're a child. So, I appreciate this. This is good. You made me happy.
I also just realized that I tried to make it entertaining that we're talking about the weather on our podcast.
Oh my god.
A deeply Midwestern sentiment. I just talk about the weather all day.
Amy is one of us now.
Yeah.
Not yet. I will be by the time this episode airs.
Okay.
And I will be a California girl again by the time this episode airs, although I always
This is our last roommates pod.
Goodbye.
Oh my god.
Think of me fondly when you say goodbye.
writing your time code right now.
We grasped hands while we sang that to each other, which our listeners will not be able to tell, but it is important to know.
I'm
It was
sorry.
disgustingly cute.
It was very cute. It was heartwarming.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Was
Piercing the
that
veil.
we should have saved that for friendship moments.
Oh, we should have. Well,
Oh.
I guess
We should have saved our unplanned emotional outburst.
Could we just slice and dice that? Do we have more veil piercing to do?
I don't. Yeah, I know we've occasionally... Maybe we should say, like, we're deliberately not talking about, like, shame the kink type stuff because we think it's
Aside from
important to
birds.
have a more grounded discussion. Except for birds. We wanted to have, like, a more grounded and critical discussion.
Then should we move into a much happier topic when waiting to get here? Koreans, riders, friendship moments, time. Friendship time.
Yeah.
Fun. I feel
Actually, we did have great timing for our friendship moment then.
yeah, it's right
Yeah,
before
good
friendship
job.
moments. It's a perfect
Wow.
segue. I thought that this whole book was like a friendship moments like nostalgia tour for like Tamora Pierce. She was like, oh, remember all these friends Dane had before that you forgot about? Well, I didn't forget about them.
Except you sort of did. Okay, so I read the first book and I thought to myself, Onoa is here and I love her.
Yeah, I didn't want to break that one to you, but
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with the fact that I thought that Onoa was going to come back the whole time. And honestly, Onoa was in here for a total of 10 seconds and all of them were great. Her first part was she was in the bathtub, she felt all that magic from breaking the barriers, and then she jumped out of the bathtub doing a war yell, and I love her.
Yeah, I
I love her.
I love Onoa very much, and if she doesn't come back after this, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna, like, I don't know, find some Onoa-themed fanfic, which there's probably gonna be one exactly.
oh my god, please don't. I feel like that's gonna go badly.
Oh no, you're right.
No, somebody's got to have written some just good gen fic, good friendship fic
Yeah.
about our favorite horse person,
Our favorite. I love
our
her.
favorite ostler.
Maybe that can be a Patreon bonus, Amy.
So I feel like yeah, the same thing where like I didn't mean to say that uncritically. Like it bothered me because that reminded me of things that like I felt like she's been doing in the other books where she introduces all these cool characters and
Yeah.
then she's like, okay, new friends for Dane in this next book. I'll just make up new friends.
Remember Evan? He was there.
Yeah, and then she's just like, you guys are so into New Mare, right? Because I'm so into New Mare. You want 3 more books about him? Good, me too.
Oh wait, is that what Tempest and Slaughter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's newer.
Backstory.
Oh, okay.
But it was also kind of nice. Like I was happy to see Taka again, even though it was so
Yeah.
brief, too brief.
I missed him. I thought he would be around more.
I love Taka.
Yeah, I misremembered, and I like thought he came to the Dragon Realms with them, and he didn't. And I was sad that I misremembered
Yeah,
that.
Kitten wasn't in this book.
Yeah, come on.
They went to the place where the dragons live, and Kitten wasn't in this book.
That's her daughter.
Yeah.
That's her daughter. That's her child.
She didn't even bring her, and there's no good reason she's not there. Like,
No, there isn't.
Well, they didn't bring her to the things that take skin. So I guess that's the reason within the narrative.
Yeah.
But outside of the narrative, there's no reason to not put your dragon daughter in every page.
right. Speaking of friendship, wasn't the friendship, like, between the little Darkings so cute and, like,
So
it almost
cute.
made me cry. Like, I
Ah.
was deeply moved.
And they were like such good like little familiars for like Dane and Numair, like traveling on their shoulders and being their friends.
Yeah, and, like, they loved each other. The little Darkings loved each other so much, and they were so excited to, like, help each other become free. Ugh, love it.
The Dark King.
And they're so small and stretchy.
Yeah.
And one of them's very wiggly, and the other one's a leaf head, has a leaf hat.
Leave
Love
that.
Leave her.
They all absorb Dane's blood and learn speech.
I also really liked in this book in particular. I thought there were some really like beautiful like Dane has a found family moments, like
Yeah.
especially at the beginning when she's like with her mom and her dad, and I think she disagrees with them about something. Maybe it's that they don't want her to go back, and she's like, well, I need to go back. And like then the Badger and like Numair support her, and I was like, that's so nice. Like
Yeah.
you can have a support system and like people that you're really close with, and it doesn't need to be your biological family.
Yeah, sometimes a family is a mom who turned into a goddess, a dad who was already a god, a second dad who's a badger, a third dad who's a god/fantasy platypus, and also your weird teacher who just kind of came along. Oh, and 3 very small stretchy friends. Okay, wait, I want to just do an Amy's fan theories update. The badger wasn't Dane's dad. But in a truer, realer sense, the badger was Dane's dad.
It's true.
Yeah, all along, the real dad all along was the badgers you met along the way.
The badger.
The badger.
The badger.
Oh. And also, I forgot that the badger was just a regular badger size, and that I didn't realize that until this book. So,
No, he's slightly larger than a normal badger.
She has a very small dad.
Can we talk about Rikash for
Yes.
a while?
It's friendship time. So yeah.
The moment when Dane realizes that they're friends and she's like, no.
Well, one of the moments.
One of the many moments.
The most
There's
important.
many moments where she's like, oh, this Stormwing is my friend. And you're like, yes, I'm so glad that you're friends with Rikash Moonsword, the Stormwing with the best last name, who, is such a good friend. And then he died.
That was
then
so unnecessary.
I forgot. It broke my heart. I am so sad. I'm permanently sad.
Yeah.
Why?
Oh.
Why did it have to happen?
The horrors of war? I don't know. Because they needed a casualty and all of the main characters were too important?
He asked if she had been staying in touch with Mara of Dunleth because he and Mara of Dunleth are friends.
They're best friends. Oh my gosh. When's Mara gonna find out?
Oh my
no.
god, why would you say that?
Amy.
No, I'm sadder. Amy.
Who's gonna tell her?
More sad.
No.
I'm sorry, that's a problem that I have, is I do make everything more sad. I'm very upset now.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, we're doing a bad job with the lighthearted friendship moments. We've got to get this. We've got to get ourselves pepped up.
Ooh, I got one. Okay, so my favorite, not my favorite, but a friendship moment that I appreciate was that Tamora Pierce kept needing to bring up Evan Lars in this, who was Dane's friend from the Riders, but she also had a female friend in the Riders who Tamora Pierce seems to have forgotten completely.
Yeah, where's Miri?
Yeah.
Isn't she not mentioned at all in this one? She's
Yeah.
Dane had a friend in the Riders, her friend Evan, and I was like, well, also her other friend.
That's not lighthearted, Kelly.
Okay, well, at least she didn't. Maybe she died. I don't know.
Kelly,
Okay.
that's
So yeah,
worse.
we don't know.
That's not good, is the thing.
Okay, happy. Cloud comes back
Cloud comes back.
Cloud comes back and is grouchy.
Yeah.
after
love her.
hiatus. Cloud is back.
Yeah, and at one point we meet new friends, and I want to know if they come back because I do love them. His name is Lord Imra, but he also has a lady. I don't know whether that's a title or a weird way to say that she's a paramour of some kind. But her name's Marielle, and I love her. She's very small. She has very short hair. She's wearing leather, and she has a spyglass and just uses her spyglass to look at the troops. And I don't know anything else about her, but I do love her. Is she gonna come back? I need to know.
I don't remember her coming back.
I don't remember either.
So I'm sorry, but I mean, it is nice though that we just get to see all these badass women just doing their thing in their places, with their people. They're just out there, It's not just a few of them.
Right.
It's so many women just out there being awesome.
Which is
Nothing
great.
gold can stay.
Because that's true of the world,
Yeah.
There'll be more characters. that you
Okay.
love. Or
I'm just
hate.
really excited for a recurring character who stays in the narrative the whole time for me to just love them. Thayette wasn't around as much as I needed her to be emotionally. Although I do love that she was carrying around the Dominion Jewel and her general attitude towards it was John, why did you give me this?
I know.
Yeah.
I wrote the same thing as once again patriarchal cliche, but oh, my husband forgot his lunch at home and I have to send it to him.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, and I love her, I don't know, that she has been so welcoming of Dane that Dane really like thinks of her as family and is so happy to be reunited and be able to help Tortall. And I think that like a big part of why she's like committed to coming back is that she's got such good friends like that, and that's nice.
We're moving into our character building section, which we still don't have a name for. We're still not sure this is the permanent name. Temporary name is still She Couldn't Be a Hero. Could she? In all capital letters.
So if you have something better than that, we're willing to workshop.
Yeah. So I do want to say, just because we used that name, did we already talk about how, like, her mom can't be a god, can she?
Could she?
We did talk about it in that we think that it's funny that Dane keeps thinking that people can't be gods when, like, 80% of the people she knows are gods.
Yeah. I do really like seeing the way that Dane, like, sort of changes as a daughter rather than just, like, as a person alone in the context of her family. Like, she has this really interesting conversation with her mom after, and it's like important that it takes place after her mom's death, because she's saying like, I'm this rad because you taught me to be this rad. And her mom's like, I didn't teach you to be rad at all. I wanted you to be safe, not rad. And Dane was kind of like, well, you taught me that when you died. And and I just found that really interesting. And then she also has these interactions with her actual father that are such like real life child father interactions, because he'll just be like talking about something and Dane will be like, sure, you do what you're doing.
I thought it was interesting like how quickly she like it seemed to accept him as her father and like treat him as such, like, pretty much instantly, which I mean, I guess
she's had a while to get used to the idea.
Yeah, but she hasn't met him. Like, I feel like even if you were meeting your father under normal circumstances and he wasn't a god, like, I feel like there'd be some awkwardness, and maybe that's just like Tamora Pierce had other things she wanted to deal with in this book that weren't that relationship. But
I liked Dane's interaction with her family, and I liked to, I feel like we've kind of gotten a sense of. Is her mom's name Sarah? We've kind of gotten a sense of her from Dane's recollections, but to see how she's different as this like goddess figure was pretty cool, especially when Dane is thinking like, oh, but her mom was absent-minded or whatever, and seeing kind of maybe the idea is that when you're a goddess, then your good qualities are magnified or something, but I also think maybe, the idea that there's potential in anyone to be able to have that power and use it for nurturing others, I think is really nice.
I also wonder how much, like, this is just sort of conjecture, but how much being absent-minded and, like, getting into trouble really matters when you're in the realm of the gods, where you can hunt things and do not worry about the fact that they died because it's just teleportation.
Yeah.
Another new character that I really liked and had kind of forgotten about was I don't remember how we decided to pronounce his name in the last episode, but Gainel, the dream god. I was so into him, especially the way that when he's like done with a conversation, he just gets up and disappears. Okay.
He's such a mood. Like, I want, like, that's what the kind of energy I want to have.
Yeah.
Is I can just leave.
My eyes are like bottomless black pits.
I love him.
I love him.
He's just doing his own thing.
Yeah. He really is.
He doesn't talk to people unless you're asleep, which, like, I guess relatable. That's how I wish I could live my life.
Yeah, it's nice that he sends Rat Tail to Dane in her dream. That's, like, I think that it's cool to think about someone who, like, makes dreams but also tries to, like, create them so that you're amenable to them and stuff like that. That's a cool character building thing.
Yeah. Kind of considerate, unlike every other god, basically.
Yeah, it is weird to think about when we get into future books where we don't interact as much with the gods. Like, this is still all going on, technically. Like, it's part of the canon.
One other character building thing that I thought was interesting in these books was sort of Ozorn's evolution in this book, which I felt was definitely towards like a very typical, pretty one-dimensional villain. Like, I want revenge on these people, and I want to be king of the world. Like, I felt like before he had, like, all these he was sort of enigmatic and had all these complexes, and here it was just like, I believe that I'm the best, I want to be king of the world, I hate you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a character de-building.
Yes.
But maybe we're supposed to read that also to be as, like, part of his Stormwing transformation. Being, like, less human, even though we're also supposed to be learning that we were wrong to judge Stormwings as inhuman.
I don't think we're supposed to read it as, like, he's less human, but I think maybe we're supposed to read it as, like, he has lost a lot of what gave him his, like, power and his self-esteem that he was used to having.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had to, like, he's gained new power, but he's had to be really, like, ruthless about it and really, like, singularly focused about it in a way that he maybe didn't have to be, or he had to have, like, he no longer has to have the, like, court persona anymore. He doesn't have to get people to think well of him.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he's also been unseated from a place where he had unlimited privilege, and where he had also, like, as you said, unlimited power, basically. He could do anything. And now he is in this place where he is only, like, he's really only just learned how to use Stormwing magic again and how to, like, yield anything near the resources that he had before. So I can see his actions being an act of desperation at this point now.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, the kind of, like, actual... sort of the actual motivation and, like, sort of intricate, what's the word? Like, it was a lot more intricate and nuanced before because he had time and energy for that.
Yeah.
In my reading.
Yeah. I think, and in his first chapter in this, I don't remember if it's the first chapter or, like, the second, but we, like, see him trying to get people to do things for him, and we see some of them, like, refusing and, like, threatening him.
Yeah.
So I think that supports that.
Do we have any more character building stuff that we want to do?
I'm okay.
Then let us transition into Knight Vision, where we talk about foreshadowing and speculation. And today we're all going here, Amy included, because I think we mostly have some speculation, and Amy has some speculation to speculate.
Hey guys, Amy here, popping in with a question that we've asked before, probably will ask again. I'm gonna ask it maybe every day of my life, like I have since I started reading In the Hand of the Goddess. What's up with Faithful? What's his deal?
And I'm gonna expound upon that because I think I vaguely remembered that Faithful was in these books, but I don't remember what happens with him after this. But he was, like, I interpreted him before in Alana as, like, maybe, like, the Mother Goddess's, like, familiar, like, she made him and sent him down. But in these books, he was, like, sitting on his, like, own little fancy throne, and then she was, like, moved. Like, he seemed fancier than just that.
Yeah, also, you told me that Faithful doesn't come back, Kelly.
I don't know.
Maybe he's an Animorph.
Yeah, at least Gus isn't lying to me.
I like the idea that he's the cat god and he just has more power than any of the other animal gods because cats are the best animal.
But what about Queen Claw?
Well, Queen Claw, maybe she has an equivalent amount of power to him and just doesn't care because she's a cat.
Is Faithful's, like, who is Faithful? Like, what's up with Faithful? Because
Amy, legitimately, I do not know.
Yeah.
I also
Can't
legitimately
tell you.
don't know.
so we're just gonna be like, Faithful's up here, don't worry about it. Just think about the world snake, everybody. That's what it's gonna be.
All I can say is read on.
Wait. Yeah, Kelly, you did lie.
I may have lied accidentally. My memory for books after Dane is significantly less good than my memory for books up until and through Dane.
Is this just like a meme? Is this a Tortall meme?
Yeah, so we've made Amy leave, and we are now acknowledging that, yes, Faithful is later in the Becca Cooper books, and I don't personally remember how that enriches our understanding of who or what Faithful is, but maybe we'll get to that later if it exists, and you don't need to tell us now because we'll figure it out. We'll get there. But for right now, we're not going to tell Amy that.
Do we have any other foreshadowing that we want to get out of the way if there's anything while Amy has her ears plugged and is standing in the corner?
Poor Amy. Bring her back.
Okay, Amy, come on back.
Okay, cool.
Amy's coming back.
I hope that the microphone didn't catch the sounds of my dancing next to your door.
Yeah, there's a little bit of dancing going on too.
Because I wanted to keep turning around to make sure that you weren't calling me, but I was like making noise in my ears so that I couldn't hear you.
No worries. The one foreshadowing question that I have, and it's open to Amy as well, is there's a new character introduced in this book who like seemed pretty sinister, but then he just went away. It was that mage that Numair battled.
Oh, yeah.
And then he just threw his like ruby eye in the river, and I was like, doesn't it seem like this seems like some sort of foreshadowing? Like, is he secretly gonna evilly like respawn from his ruby eye? Like, I don't know. I don't remember this at all, and I don't think that it actually happens at all. But he seemed just like a weird character to bring in and then throw away without really using.
Right, that's Einar Haydenstra,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have such a good
Yeah.
memory for fantasy names, Gus. I'm really impressed.
No, this is 100% because I had to look up his last name
on
on Friday in our last episode. Also, I listened to part of this book on audio.
Ah.
Nice.
So, got the audio in my head.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does seem sinister, and I don't know, maybe he's still operating somewhere right now.
Oh, under our very noses.
No, stop! He's under my bed.
What? No. That was back in Dragon Times, a real historical period.
Dragon Times. Okay, don't worry about it. He's long dead.
Yeah.
Dragon Times.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
Dragon Times was long ago, but real.
Yeah, he was a real foe in Dragon Times, like, when I was reading about that in history class, you know?
Mhm.
I learned all that.
Yes. Did you ever take a Dragon Times literature class?
I just took A push, not APDT.
Okay. This is a really good joke, and I think we got a lot of mileage out of it. Great job, everybody.
Sorry. Cool. I think we're done with speculation unless any of you all have more speculation to speculate.
Yeah, my speculation is all just like, what is up with Faithful? Anyway.
We are now entering the Chamber of the Ordeal. It is rating time. It will be an ordeal. We are going to rate the books on nostalgia, animal friendship, and who we would recommend the books to.
Accurate.
Yeah,
10 size out of 10.
thanks. Does anybody feel compelled to rate this first?
Well, I wanted to say maybe, do any of us have any answer to who we would recommend this to other than possibly nobody?
Adult
trash.
romance fans who are into age gaps.
I would recommend, I guess I'll go first. I would honestly recommend this to adults, probably starting around people who are like in the later half of college age, so probably people over 20, because I honestly think there are a lot of things about this book that are good and a good conclusion to the Dane series, but I think that the romance needs context that you can only get, or not to say that you can only get, but that you're much more equipped to have when you're a bit older. So I could not and would not recommend this to young adult readers. I don't think there's any amount of discussion, like we said earlier, that would be enough discussion. But I really think that there are really good things about this book. I love the dragons. I think, like we said, like the concept is super cool. Her going to the realm of the gods, and like the change in genre is super cool.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things to love about it, but I think you need to be able to read it with a more critical eye than you would if you were younger.
I agree.
And my ratings. Nostalgia, so difficult. Like I said, this is my favorite book, and it was really hard to read this time because of that romance, which is what it is. But on the other hand, like, I forgot how much I love the dragons. So I feel like nostalgia is probably like a 6.5 out of 10. Like, the book was really discolored for me by the romance, but on the other hand, like, I remembered how much I liked parts of it in the past, and there were some parts that were better than I remembered, like how cool the dragons were. So Animal friendship, honestly, once again, I have to say, there was not a whole bunch of, like, animal mind-to-mind speech, because all the god animals didn't talk to our mind-to-minds. There weren't so many animals in this book, but the dragons were really cool. But I don't know if they really count, because they weren't really friends. So I'm going to say animal friendship is a disappointing, like, 7 out of 10 for this book.
7?
Yeah, come on.
Disappointing 7.
Yeah. I feel like there wasn't even that much animal screen time because everything was a god or...
But think about the duck mole.
The god animals were
That's
gods.
a god.
They were still kind of animals, like the duck mole and like the skink, and she saved the baby nest of baby skinks. The crowd comes
cute.
back at the end. Animals. They're still animals.
She did save the chickens even though she hated them.
Yeah.
And then all the gulls save her at the end from falling. So for some reason, Tamora Pierce likes gulls even though she doesn't like chickens. Like, I feel like gulls are even more annoying than chickens. I don't know. So still a 7 out of 10, but for me that's really low. So know that. That's my rating.
Hi, I'm Amy. I didn't read these books before, so I can't rate them on nostalgia. So I'm going to rate them on the number of sequential post-it notes that I left in this book that have just one word in all caps, usually no. So that's 6 out of 10. And I would say for animal friendship, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10, maybe even a 5 out of 10. Because less than 50% of this book is about animals. The animal friendship moments were good, but we have seen much better animal friendship moments in other series.
It's true.
And I cannot in good conscience give this above a 6. Like, I mean, you know more than I do about these books, and I'm not judging your rating.
It's okay. I know you're not. We'll get through this together.
I would give these books, nostalgia. So as I've said before, like, I was not the biggest Dane fan as a kid, although I did like the books. And so I have some nostalgia for them, but not enough to overcome any of how much I did not like reading them this time as, like, more of an adult. So, like, I'm like a -4. Like, I don't know. like, it made me sad that I had read them in the past to reread them. Although this was, on the other hand, like, I don't know, I think this came through much clearer in the first part of this, us talking about this book. This is a good book. It's fun to read. There's a lot of good parts. Like, part of the plot is kind of confusing, but, like, the mood is cool, the genre is cool. So, like, I don't have nostalgia about it because I appreciate different things about it than what I did when I was a kid. And also, like, the parts that I remembered most vividly were parts that I do not like now. So... -4 out of 10. And then animal friendship. Okay, are Darkings animals? Because I was a big
I don't
fan.
think they're animals.
Then what are they?
I think that they are.
Blood.
Well, sure.
Well, yes. Lots of animals are.
I think that to
blood.
be an animal, you have, like, that's a different category from something that is animated by magic. Like, I think that the Darkings could even be something akin to an artificial intelligence.
Okay. Then I'll give animal friendship 6, AI friendship 9.
Nice. No, that, yeah.
Okay. I guess that leaves me.
Does.
Yes. Let's see. Man, I was harsh in my little notes for this section. For friendship, I wrote, for animal friendship, sorry. I wrote 2 out of 10. There were not enough animal friends in this book. I'm sorry.
It's true.
It's just...
I am all the way with you, Gus.
Like, I don't want to be mean, but there could be more. Yeah.
There could be so many more.
And I just feel like, you know, like, the cameos that we got of animals, like Cloud at the end and stuff, like, that's basically a cameo.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like there were real, like, friendship moments with the animals in the same way that we've seen before. For nostalgia, man, Grace, I really agree with you. I mean, in terms of, like, just, like, it's a negative number. I mean, part of that is just that this book isn't my favorite in terms of, like, plot, and, like, there wasn't a lot that I loved in it. You know, just in that, like, there wasn't a lot that where I was like, yes, this is a good thing that I love. It was fine.
Yeah.
You know, some things accepted. But there weren't a lot of things that were like, oh man, this is just, like, real nostalgic for me. Loved the Darkings.
Yeah.
But it just there wasn't much there to actually redeem it for me. So I don't know, like a -1.
Does anybody else want to recommend, if anybody else has different audience recommendations, non-recommendations?
I think you said good things about it. Yeah, like adults. Yeah.
I do want to in finality just say, like, I did enjoy this book except for the parts that I did not enjoy, which we've discussed earlier. But, like, I enjoyed these books partially because I hadn't read them before, and I can't really consider In the Realm of the Gods without considering the rest of the Dane books, which I enjoyed immensely. But I do think that this book has the problems we discussed earlier. So I just want to give that context because I realize that my ratings are fake.
Okay, then let us move into Palace Gossip. We have listener mail this week. Our first one, Amy, I feel like you're particularly tickled by this one, so why don't you?
Jean the Poet asked us on Tumblr, wild theory about stormwing braids. The way oxpecker birds sit on rhinos and they help each other out. There are small birds who braid the stormwing's hair for them, Disney princess style.
Love it.
I love it.
Let's talk. Jean the Poet, thank you. Thank you. I think we've already expressed our gratitude on online several times.
But thank you again.
Yes.
This is like the most perfect thing you possibly could have told me, because A, biology and animals, and B, I'm so obsessed with stormwings not having hands. So you really just, like, this is the best thing anybody's ever said to me, maybe.
Yeah, and it brought back symbiotic relationships, which Numera taught us about.
I was so ready. Thank you, Numera. But now we know this is a mutualistic relationship.
Yes, and this is why Ozorn's hair is so bad.
Because he can't have friends.
Yeah, because he can't make friends with the small birds, and all of his friends that he made are too squiggly to grab the hair and do it.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, it's a good thing.
Anyway, thank you very much. We liked that a lot.
Rikash is a Disney princess.
His braids are so good. He has a lot of bird friends.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why he has the best hair, because he's the best at friends.
Oh.
Oh.
Let's do the next one. The next one was from Fairy Tale on Fire, also on Tumblr, I believe, who said, I looked up Buri's clan name, the origin of Thea, and other names relating to the Khmer people, and they're all Tibetan and Burmese, areas oppressed by other nations. I've started thinking of Syrian as being similar to Eastern Russia in terms of ethnic diversity. Thoughts?
Thoughts? I like it.
Yeah. It's hard because we obviously want to be able to, like, levy critiques about racial representation, and to do that we have to be able, like, we often have to pin things to certain places based on the signaling that's done in the book, but sometimes that can be tough, and so it's good to think of things like name origins and things like that to tell more about what we're supposed to be reading into it that we might not be able to just because of, like, what knowledge we separately have, if that makes sense. So I like that idea as how to learn more about what's going on in the book.
Yeah, although we've also talked about how isn't the Khmer, like, we've discussed previously that the Khmer culture seemed to also come from Cambodia in name only. So there is a confusing amalgam, but the fact that this is a, like, thinking of it as an Eastern Russia ethnically diverse area definitely helps to conceptualize that and sort of solve that problem that we had working through it. But, I mean, this is an unconfirmed theory, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree. So thanks for sending it in.
We have another listener mail from Gus.
Yeah, I'm totally a listener of this podcast. I listen to our podcast episodes, especially when I'm not on them. Sometimes I don't listen to the ones I'm on. Sorry, folks. But yeah, I had a question. It's really just more of a thing I wanted to bring up. But I have a question, which is, they very briefly, and in the middle of a lot of other stuff, so I almost missed it, they very briefly bring up unicorn fever. And I want to know, I have a few theories about this. One is unicorn fever is just like chicken pox, like we name illnesses just after things that are entirely unrelated. Or that it has something to do with, like, myths that we know of unicorns, where, like, it's specifically mentioned that Dane has had unicorn fever, and maybe it has something to do with, like, being a young woman. Who knows? I would kind of think that was a little bit gross, but whatever. Could be something with that. The other thing is, this book also had flesh-eating unicorns in it. Or like the previous one did. That's the other mention of unicorns that we've had. I want to know what the connection is. What is unicorn fever? Why are there flesh-eating unicorns? Why are these things only brought up in passing? I love it.
I know someone who had unicorn fever once. It's me when I was 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like disco fever.
Maybe Dane saw her first unicorn and she was like, this is so beautiful.
Just so much that she, like, didn't notice anything happening around her. She was just out of it. She was like, man.
She's just like, don't talk to me about anything else for a month. Like,
she would.
I saw another cool animal friend. I'm gonna befriend it. It's like a horse, but the sequel to horses, and I'm gonna find it.
Eats meat, and that's cool, I guess.
Yeah. So, like, horses, kind of messed up depending on what your opinions about horses, which may vary. Unicorns have a big horn on them that can be used for violence, and then unicorns are also eat flesh, so that's like 2 steps beyond messed up horseness. And they can apparently have a fever named after them that seems serious.
So when I think the flesh and unicorns actually were touched upon. Like, I think Dane says after she learns that, like, immortals are created in dreams, like, I think she says something along the lines of, like, oh, I could easily see how, like, something good could go bad. That's how there became evil censures and flesh-eating unicorns. So I think she does reference that. But I have no idea what unicorn fever is. Maybe, like, mad cow disease? Like, maybe Dane ate some unicorn.
Oh my god.
Okay, it is time to wrap up. Housekeeping. If you guys have listener mail, questions, discussion stuff for us, you can find us on Twitter at Tortall Recall. You can find us on Tumblr, where Tortall Recall. Our website is www.tortallrecall.com, and our email is tortallrecall@gmail.com. If you have a moment and the inclination, we would love it if you would rate and review us on iTunes. We have a Patreon now.
It's patreon.com/tortallrecall. Thank you so much to everyone who's donating, and if you wanted to donate some money, we have some bonus episodes up there, as well as some, like, writing content, and we're gonna have more weird stuff on there in the future, as well as one bonus episode each month. But I mean, it just is to make it so that we don't have additional costs from running this. So
thank you.
Like, yes, thank you.
We'd like to thank our music, which is Green Sleeves by Zeta. We'd like to thank some folks who social media'd with us this week or reviewed us. And we'd like to thank the following people on Twitter: Blackness Dyer, More Research, Catherine Unzer, Deidre Loves Jim, Indigo Han, Amy M. Giac, writer S.T. McGee, Ziggy T. Schultz, Non-Binosaur, The Gay Option, Writing Rissa, Queen Blurblard, and Marbletross.
Why do we include ourselves in our lists?
Because I need those promos.
We'd like to thank Deidre, who reviewed us on Stitcher, and
First Stitcher review.
Lux Auguste, Baby Truther, and Erin Kiley, who reviewed us on iTunes. We'd also like to thank people who donated to us on Patreon as of June 8th. And they are Joe, Abigail, Vague Dark Entity, Ethan, Lemons, Math, Emmy, Isabel, Catherine, Abigail L., Courtney, and Sophie. And if you are a patron who wasn't just shouted out and you would like to get shouted out, we have a thread on our Patreon about this, so just comment your name on that. We just didn't want to shout out people's names without asking first. And I think
we want to talk a little bit about what's coming up for Tortall Recall. So we are just finishing up the Dane series now, as you know, because you just listened to the last episode on it. And so we've done some discussion, like, amongst ourselves, and we are looking at the idea of doing a Dane wrap-up episode like we did for Alana, but we are not sure yet what that would look like, because we've all been on the Dane episodes, which was not the case for Alana. So if you're interested in that, please send in any questions that you have via our various social medias, and we will likely do either a bonus episode or a Twitter Q&A. And as well, we are looking at taking the month of September off, so you likely won't see a lot of new content from us then. but you can keep up with us via social media. We do have a bonus episode coming up in August as well, right? Or September. In August as well, and various other things going on. Like I said, social media is a great way to keep up with that. And last time we technically took time off, we did put out a lot of bonus episodes. We want to be clear that that's not the plan this time. But if you're hungry for more Total Recall, we have a lot of bonus episodes on Patreon, and those will be ongoing as well.
I just want to be very transparent about the reason why we are taking time off is this podcast we really love having your interaction. We are so happy that people are listening to this and enjoying it, and that's really exciting for us. But as we have gotten more interaction, this has become more work for us. For example, with Patreon episodes, that means none of us have a month off anymore, and it's very important to us that we make sure that this still remains something that we do as friends and enjoy. So that means scheduling time for ourselves where we can relax and not worry too much about this becoming something stressful.
We're so happy that you guys are enjoying it, but we just need a little bit of time to recuperate and then come back at you with more awesome Total Recall.
I would also say, because we've gotten so much back from you guys, that's inspired us to put so much more into the project than we originally planned, which is wonderful because it's great. And it's a project that we love. And there are so many Tomorrow Pierce books that we've got to keep our stamina up. So that's a concern for us.
Alana would take a short rest between bouts.
So I guess I'll sign us off and I'll just do a little... I want to do a Bye Dane song, but I don't even have a song because I'm just sad.
You can do the opposite of the Dragon Tale song.
Well, goodbye, Dane. Goodbye, Dane. I'll really miss your cool animal friends. Goodbye, Dane. I know you're in the cow books, but you're not around for long enough for me. I'll miss you. Bye, Dane. I love you. Animals are great. Well, with that, this is the end of the Dane books, and hope you enjoyed. See you later, Tortallini. Ow!
We can't hit each other with our heads while we record anymore.
Owie.